When the end of June comes around, I have 4 major countdowns to do. Not only the best and worst of June, but it's midway through the year, so I have my best and worst countdowns for the first half of the year of the movies I've seen so far. So since I have 4 major countdowns to do, and usually countdowns are a little quicker, hopefully I can get through all of them and maybe have some time to do some movie reviews tonight. Hopefully. Now, June was a pretty consistently good month for me. Yes, you do have your stinkers, you do have some movies that are in the 2 or 1.5 star range for me, but out of the 11 major movies that I did see, I did like 7 of them, and most of them are 4 stars when I actually get the time to review them. But of course, there's more than 11 movies that come out in any given month. Maybe the major releases would be 11, but there's the limited releases, there's the films that go straight to DVD, there's the films that get select theaters, films that are hard to find in fairly medium or small towns. So there are a few movies that I might mention that I haven't seen yet, but maybe could have made this list because they did look good. Past Life, Band-Aid, The Hero, Shimmer Lake, which is a Netflix film, so maybe I'll see it while I'm on vacation this month. Mocha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Maudie. Oakjaw, which is also a Netflix movie, so I can see that anytime. Hopefully I'll see it eventually. The Little Hours, The Beguiled, and 13 Minutes, which is also titled in some places Elser? E-L-S-E-R. And there's a bunch of other movies that I don't know too much about. I don't have a lot of feelings for them. I don't really have any sort of expectations, but I might as well mention them anyway because they don't have a negative expectation from me. The Ornithologist, The Handsome Devil, The Exception, The Bad Batch, Dean, and 222. Now I did like 7 movies from June, but I'm narrowing it down to 5, so I have 2 honorable mentions. Those would be the 2 animated films, well, 2 of the animated films to come out this month, which is Cars 3 and Captain Underpants, the epic first movie, or the first epic movie. Yeah, those are the 2 movies that didn't quite make the cut for the top 5 of this month. And Cars 3, I did have a movie review for it. I did give it 4 stars. It rounded up to a 4 for the average. With a 4-star movie getting honorable mentions, yeah, there was a lot of 4 stars for me in this month. 3 of which are the top 3, which are 4.5 or over. So I'm going to start off with my number 5 favorite film of June 2017. It is Wonder Woman. Now, for some people, this might be higher on their list for June. Some people might find this is one of their best movies of June, while others might find it to be one of the worst, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about this film. And I had a fairly similar experience. For the most part, I found Wonder Woman to be an above-average superhero film. Not a terrible film, and not a mediocre one, just slightly above average. My own personal feelings for the movie is probably 4 stars, or maybe even 4.25, while my critical viewing of it, my sort of breaking down all the aspects of the film and rating each aspect and converting it into an average is somewhere around 3.8. Or maybe it was closer to 3.5. It was somewhere around that range. Anyway, there were plenty of things that I did enjoy about Wonder Woman. First, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is really good. She brought a lot more humor and character to the film than I would have expected, especially with some of the fish out of water scenes. And she still does feel like a pretty damn good Wonder Woman. Chris Pine is also great in the film. Gal Gadot and Chris Pine are the best people in this film, and they are the biggest main characters. They're the ones with the most screen time. And I definitely bought their relationships together. I did like the chemistry between the two, some of the comedic chemistry between the two, as well as the dramatic chemistry between both of the actors. I do ultimately like the setting of this film, how it takes place in World War I, something that we don't get a lot in movies, even wartime movies. And even though World War II had some of the most human atrocities, such as the Holocaust and genocides and all crazy stuff, then again, World War I might have too. Not the most popular ones, though. But World War I was back when all these different new weapon technologies were used, such as gas and the machine gun, and no one was quite used to it, and so it would just had a bunch of people just dying in trenches and all this grime and dirt. It is a pretty depressing war. Then again, what war is happy-go-lucky, cheerful? I don't think there's any such thing. And World War I was the first major world war. I mean, there was only 2 of them so far. Hopefully, just 2 of them. I like that that's part of this movie. I like that's the setting, especially since Captain America already did World War II. And if Wonder Woman did World War II, then people would say, oh, it's copying Captain America, because there is a lot of Captain America similarities throughout this film. I do like that this movie did a little bit more character building with Wonder Woman's character and how she views humanity, how she's more of a black and white sort of mentality, and then starts seeing everything in a gray area. And I love her journey through this movie, and I like that it's a little more subtle than most comic book hero movies. I think there are some really great things in this movie. Unfortunately, sometimes they just don't outshine some of the flaws, I feel, for the film. A couple major things that ultimately made me feel this is just slightly above average rather than just an amazing superhero film. There was the CGI. Almost every single CGI moment in this film was just so cartoony, so cheesy looking, and just really hindered the film. It was some of the worst CGI of this year, to be honest. I also wasn't a huge fan of the whole beginning of the film. Like, I do like the whole fantasy setting, but I think it could have done a little bit better, and the dialogue was a little too And as the ending comes along, and there's a really great moment where you think, oh, this is how it really should end, and then they do something completely different, and they go for the expected. So yeah, there could have been a really great ending in this movie, but then they decide, oh, but this is a superhero movie. People would be bummed if there wasn't some big superhero fight, so we got to add that in there, which kind of compromises the really smart ending that this film could have had. Not that I hate the whole superhero fight ending, I just feel it could have been better with the things that it set up. And those really hurt the film, but at the same time, I still really enjoyed it, and that's why I consider it one of my favorite films of June. It just might not be one of my favorite films of the year. Alright, my number 4 was a film I wasn't expecting too much with. I did like the trailer, but at the same time felt like the trailer was telling me too much, and ultimately it did. But at that same time, I really enjoyed this movie. It is Megan Levy. Basically, it is the film Max Should Have Been. I mean, while it's not particularly dealing with a dog with post-traumatic stress, like that's not like the main focus that Max should have been, but then throws away. They don't really specify that this dog might have post-traumatic stress, but you kind of feel it and you sense it from the dog's actions and its vicious actions as it's being trained. And not only do we have the dog, Rex, connecting with the human main character, but also she learns a thing about connecting with something else other than herself, because she has this terrible life where she can't connect to anyone and doesn't care too much about her parents and feels like her parents are bad and all this other stuff working its way into her sort of internal conflict. And so eventually these two bond and they heal each other through war. Now, I wasn't expecting a lot of major action in this film. I know it was a war drama, but I figured that maybe they weren't in too much action. And there really is only one action scene in this movie. And it's not an over-the-top action moment. It's a really calculated and down-to-earth action moment in a modern war movie. And I like that about it, but some people might be bored and feel, oh, well, that's what I was waiting for? Terrible movie. Like, this definitely isn't an action film, this is a wartime drama. And while it can definitely get sappy at times, I never felt it, and I was completely engaged through the entire film. And I think all the acting in this movie was damn great. From Kate Mara, from the dog, from Common, from Tom Felton, from Bradley Whitford, and from Raymond Rodriguez, everyone was really great in this film. I think there are a few things that are lacking in this film and some things that could have been delved in deeper, but ultimately I still really enjoyed the film, and that is why it's my number 4. Alright, I'm not going to talk too much about my number 3 of June because honestly I want to do a review of this because most people probably haven't heard of this film because it's not a big wide release movie. It is I, Daniel Blake, and to some people in the world, they got this film December of last year because I think it is a British film, so the UK probably had this a lot earlier, but America, we got it in June of 2017. I think this is pretty damn incredible, but at the same time, I feel that some people will not enjoy this movie and find it too bland because it is very minimalistic and it is very raw and grounded, so some people might not enjoy this movie and think it's bland, but at the same time I felt there's enough character in this movie, enough satire, enough funny moments, and enough dramatic moments that really kept me engaged and really made me enjoy this film. One of the things I loved about it and how grounded and how raw it is there is no musical score in this movie. The only music in the film is the time when they actually play music in a scene or two, and for the closing credits. So what I did love about the emotional moments in this movie, the dramatic moments, it didn't cue up any of the score, it didn't cue up any musical notes, so it didn't feel like I was being manipulated into feeling one thing. It felt like the raw emotions were real and they were effective. That's all I want to really talk about for now because, like I said, hopefully I do a review of this tonight, along with Baby Driver and what else do I have to do? Oh, Spider-Man Homecoming. I guess I could do The Mummy eventually too. I got a lot to do. Now my number 1 and my number 2 films of June 2017 are in my top 5, and they're so close together that the average scores that I count for these particular countdowns was a difference of 0.01. That's how close it was. Now, I enjoyed my number 2 more than I enjoyed number 1 personally, but the average score is a score between, that's an average of my personal score and my more critical score, and my number 1 I think has a better critical score than my number 2, which is why it's this way for this countdown. Anyway, my number 2 is the horror film, It Comes at Night. And yes, I do feel it is a horror film. Unfortunately, it's the type of horror film that is a little bit more atmospheric, it is a little bit more suspenseful, it's a slow burning horror film, and the ultimate horror of the film is through its themes and the actions the characters do. It's not from some creature that goes bump in the night, it's not from some crazy virus, even though there is a virus in this film. It's the fact that the characters do certain things to help their other fellow family members survive and what they do to keep everyone safe. It's the horror of a post-apocalyptic movie, but unfortunately some of those horror elements have been used so much in series like zombie movies like The Walking Dead and all these other things that I think some people have been desensitized to that particular horror, and for some people it's just a day-to-day thing for a movie that's about a post-apocalyptic setting. But because it focuses on those horror elements, and it is very much a horror element, this is a horror movie. I loved almost everything about this movie. The simple story, the camera angles, the camera movements, the cinematography basically. The acting was phenomenal, the characters I really cared about and understood their motivations, and I loved the whole feel that you don't know everything in this movie. You know as much as the characters do, and it really gets you in their heads, and you realize that our main character, which is the boy in this film, not the little one, but the main kid, the teenager, is basically having a psychological breakdown being in this environment, having seen his grandpa died, having to deal with the virus, having these newcomers come along, and that's the whole crazy thing that spins this entire movie to its conclusion. There's some people that might not feel that the ending is strong enough or explains enough, but me, my cousin, and my sister, three of us, we were not confused through the whole movie. We all had the same conclusion. It's a very easy movie to understand as long as you're paying attention, but I feel that there's enough people in movie theaters nowadays that feel that everything should be explained to them. They shouldn't have any plot holes, despite the fact that that's the whole point of this particular movie. And they just go there to be entertained. They don't want to have to pay attention to the dialogue. They don't want to have to pay attention to what's going on and figure it out for themselves, which isn't a terrible thing, but unfortunately that means that this is considered one of the most hated films of this year, along with The Witch last year. And I like this, I love The Witch, and I actually like this one even more. But I think I want to talk more about that when I eventually review it, so until next time, I guess, or maybe a couple months into the future. And so if that wasn't my number one, you're probably guessing what my number one is now. It is Baby Driver. And again, this is another one I don't want to talk too much about in this countdown because obviously I want to review that pretty soon. Hopefully I can. It is a really fun movie. It is just pretty damn amazing. The acting, cinematography, the action, all the chase scenes, the heist scenes were pretty damn fantastic. And it wasn't fantastic because it was over the top and crazy. It just had this really fun vibe. It was all done to the beat of particular music. And most of them were all done through the getaway driver. So the main action of these heists are usually the chase scene. And I feel the whole movie really builds in the head of the main character through ways that are a little bit more unconventional with the film industry. And I did love that about this film. I do love that it does still feel like an Edgar Wright film, even though it's not like the other three movies that I saw of his. It's not a parody of a heist. It's still it's very much a typical heist movie, but done in a way that's creative and more Tarantino-like as well. So it's almost like an Edgar Wright meets Tarantino film. There's a lot of fun and lightheartedness to it, but at the same time, when dramatic things happen, when the shit hits the fan, things go down and it's crazy and violent and holy crap, things got serious. And while it is pretty stereotypical through the first two acts of the film, once it gets to the third act, there was pieces that I thought, okay, this is going to happen and things are building up to this, but it's done in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like the third act, I predicted, oh, there's going to be someone that's trying to kill Baby Driver because something's going to go wrong and some character's probably going to blame Baby Driver for doing this. Or Baby actually, it's not Baby Driver, it's just Baby. But it wasn't the character I expected it would be. And there was a whole elevator scene where I'm like, okay, this is going to kind of be like the Departed scene with Leonardo DiCaprio in the elevator. And I figured, oh, this person would show up. And then it's like, oh no, another person showed up instead. I mean, it's things like that that made it a little bit less predictable. And like I said, I don't want to talk too much about this film because hopefully I'll review it within the upcoming weeks. Maybe even tonight. I don't know. Who knows when I'll upload it though. So anyway, those were my favorite films of June 2017. What were your favorite films of June? And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews or countdowns of 2015, 2016, or 2017. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.